Next, I want to discuss the role of our beloved President Zelensky, the shield of integrity, in the Trump-Musk game of corruption. Reminder of our basic game rules, the conflicting objectives of Trump-Musk versus the average citizen. In this game, Trump is focusing on reforms benefiting the wealthy, and Musk is benefiting from public support and resources. Their actions will prioritize the interests of the rich and powerful over the welfare of everyday citizens. And the players include Trump, Musk, politicians, and the American public, who are the pawns in this game struggling to survive. President Zelensky, the shield of integrity. In the corruption game, President Volodymyr Zelensky would play a pivotal role as a symbol of resistance and reform, a leader committed to fighting both corruption and external threats like Russia, while striving to maintain national integrity, transparency, and justice. He becomes a key player for democratic values and anti-corruption reforms, actively working to dismantle corrupt systems both domestically and globally, while also fending off external threats posed by Putin and others. President Zelensky, the shield of integrity. His gameplay. Zelensky's character is defined by his commitment to fighting corruption within his own country, while also taking on the broader geopolitical struggle against Russia's attempts to destabilize Ukraine and other democratic countries. He represents resilience, reform, and the defense of sovereignty, standing as a counterforce to corrupt elites like Trump and Musk and the external influence of Putin. His unique ability to unite democratic forces, expose corruption, and stand firm against foreign aggression makes him an essential force in this complex geopolitical game. President Zelensky, the shield of integrity. How Zelensky plays in the corruption game. First, anti-corruption crusader. He's considered the reformer. Zelensky's primary focus in the game is to combat internal corruption within Ukraine and among his allies. He champions transparency, reform, and accountability, working to dismantle corrupt networks and promote justice and fairness. As the anti-corruption crusader, he's fighting oligarchs. In Ukraine, Zelensky works to challenge the oligarchic influence that has plagued his country. In the game, Zelensky can use his influence to strip away power from corrupt business elites who have long profited from government corruption, shifting resources to the public and ensuring that the people's interests are served. In a minigame, by activating anti-oligarchic reform cards, Zelensky can dismantle corrupt business empires that exploit the country's resources, redirecting wealth and power back to democratic institutions. He will focus on creating a level playing field, removing monopolistic practices, and exposing illegal dealings. As the anti-corruption crusader, he'll be a whistleblower in transparency. Zelensky utilizes whistleblowers and transparency initiatives to expose corrupt activities, including those within his own government. He can pass reforms aimed at making government dealings open and accessible to the public, especially when it comes to foreign aid, military spending, and foreign investments. In a minigame, activating transparency and whistleblower protection cards forces the public and the media to expose corruption, ensuring that any hidden deals or shady dealings by foreign actors like Trump, Musk, or Putin come to light. Also under his anti-corruption gameplay, political will for reform. Zelensky's political will is crucial for driving through laws that promote anti-corruption efforts and uphold democratic integrity. He can implement legal frameworks that make it harder for figures like Trump or Musk to launder money, evade taxes, or manipulate markets. In a minigame, By activating legal reforms and anti-corruption legislation cards, Zelensky introduces measures to close loopholes and prosecute corrupt figures, even at the highest levels of power. The second way President Zelensky, the shield of integrity, plays in the game is the defender of sovereignty, the shield of Ukraine. In the context of the geopolitical struggle against Russia, Zelensky is the defender of Ukraine's sovereignty, and by extension, the values of democracy and independence. His leadership helps maintain national security, safeguard democratic processes, and defend against external influences, especially from Putin. Continuing on, defender of sovereignty. Resistance against Putin's aggression. Zelensky plays a key role in fending off Russia's military aggression and influence campaigns. He fights back against Russian cyber attacks, disinformation, and any other tactics Putin might use to destabilize Ukraine or support corrupt leaders elsewhere. In a minigame, Zelensky activates defensive resilience and cyber protection cards to prevent Putin's destabilizing forces from infiltrating Ukraine's political system. He also organizes resistance movements and coordinates with NATO and international allies to push back against Russian encroachment. Continuing with his Defender of Sovereignty gameplay. International support. Zelensky works to gather international allies who support Ukraine's fight for sovereignty and democracy. He strategically leverages foreign aid, military support, and diplomatic channels to push back against Russia and expose global corruption. In a minigame, by playing international coalition and foreign diplomatic aid cards, Zelensky secures economic sanctions against Russian oligarchs and leaders supporting Putin, while strengthening Ukraine's military capabilities and public morale. Continuing on with the Defender of Sovereignty gameplay. Exposing Russian influence. As a key figure fighting both corruption and foreign meddling, Zelensky focuses on exposing Russian attempts to corrupt democratic systems. This includes working with international intelligence agencies, the EU, and the US to uncover Russian influence on global leaders, including Trump and Musk. In a minigame, Zelensky can activate global exposure to reveal hidden Russian influence in foreign governments, particularly through the use of illicit financing, manipulation of elections, or other corrupt mechanisms that benefit Trump and Putin's shared objectives. The third way that President Zelensky, the shield of integrity, plays in this game is the champion of global democracy, the voice of freedom. Zelensky positions himself as a global advocate for democracy, human rights, and anti-corruption efforts, often leading the charge to unify democratic nations against authoritarianism and corruption. His leadership on the global stage is crucial in mobilizing pro-democracy movements and encouraging cooperation between nations to tackle the shared threat of corruption and authoritarianism. As the champion of global democracy, the voice of freedom, President Zelensky, shield of integrity. International anti-corruption advocacy. Zelensky takes an active role in global summits and forums, rallying democratic nations to hold corrupt leaders accountable, push back against autocratic regimes, and promote economic and political reforms in countries suffering from corruption. In a minigame, Zelensky can activate global advocacy and anti-corruption coalition cards to strengthen international resolve against corrupt figures like Putin, Trump, and Musk. This boosts international cooperation and introduces global sanctions, trade embargoes, or unified policy actions to counter corruption and autocratic influence. Continue with this champion of global democracy gameplay, President Zelensky, building democratic alliances. Zelensky creates alliances with other democratic leaders. Example, EU leaders, US President, to combat disinformation, foreign interference, and autocratic power grabs. He helps bolster support for those who seek to resist corruption and fight for free and fair elections. By playing democratic coalition cards, Zelensky brings together like-minded countries to coordinate their efforts against authoritarian regimes, ensuring that Trump, Musk, and Putin don't receive global backing for their corrupt practices. The fourth in President Zelensky's The Shield of Integrity, his gameplay. Restoring faith in institutions, the rebuilder. Function. Zelensky's leadership inspires restoration of public trust in the political system and institutions. Through reforms and transparency, he works to restore faith in democracy and the rule of law, even as external and internal threats continue to challenge Ukraine's stability. Public trust and engagement. Zelensky engages directly with the people, making them central to his fight against corruption. He promotes participatory governance, where the people have a direct say in political reforms and accountability measures. In a minigame, by using public engagement and governance transparency cards, Zelensky strengthens civic participation, making the government more accountable and allowing citizens to expose corruption from within the system. The in-game strategy for President Zelensky, the Shield of Integrity. Zelensky's primary goal in the corruption game is to break the cycle of corruption by enforcing transparency, building democratic resilience, and countering foreign influence. His role is multifaceted. As a reformer, defender, and global voice for democracy, he pushes for both domestic anti-corruption reforms and international action to hold autocratic and corrupt leaders accountable. Zelensky defends Ukraine's sovereignty and undermines Putin's influence, stopping Russia's attempts to expand its reach or corrupt other governments. Zelensky fights to dismantle oligarchic control, promote fair governance, and expose the global corruption schemes of Trump, Musk, and other elites. Zelensky also unites democratic nations in a collective push against authoritarianism and corruption, forging stronger international coalitions for systematic change. In the endgame, Zelensky's ultimate victory is not just surviving the war with Russia, but creating a lasting legacy of transparency, anti-corruption reforms, and a strong democratic Ukraine that can inspire the rest of the world to reject corrupt systems and embrace a better, fairer global order. Thank you for watching President Zelensky, the Shield of Integrity in the Trump-Musk corruption game.